Good evening, and I would like to welcome everybody here tonight to our seminar. My name is Richard Schecher, and I will be conducting tonight's brief seminar going into the various home ownership choices that buyers do have. The topic of our seminar today is called the Buyer's Smart Choice, and we're specifically dealing with vacation home ownership. It's a niche market. It's something that I know quite a bit about, and it's something that you may or may not understand the actual niche that is involved with the vacation home market. So let's take a look at this. And we start by realizing that most vacation homes come with a very unique set of problems. Vacation homes are not lived in 12 months a year. They're not meant to be a primary residence. So usually you're going to end up having all of the expenses associated with your primary residence for a property that you only get to use a part of the time or a fraction of the year. So this is what we're going to do tonight. We're going to take a look at the different types of ownership options that are available to buyers. And we're going to look at this with a little bit of a slant from the Schecher Group Owners Club. Now, here's our happy couple looking at their dream vacation home, and it just happens to be for sale by the Schecher Group Owners Club. And because it is for sale by the Schecher Group Owners Club, there are several options available to this happy couple. And that's what we're going to take a look at tonight. We're going to take a look at the ownership types. We have the traditional ownership. This is what everybody is used to. Most of the general public is very familiar with. You buy something, you pay for it, and it's yours. This is the traditional form of ownership. There is also something called fractional ownership, where very similar to traditional ownership, however, you're only buying a fraction of the ownership. In other words, you may be buying a 50% ownership, or you may be buying a 1/12 or a 1/8. You may buy 1 month out of 12 or 6 months out of 12, but you're only getting a fraction of the entire property. There's also another type of ownership that a lot of people are really not familiar with, and that's called the right of use ownership. Now, each one of these three different types of ownership comes with a particular set of criteria, for example. Let's take a look at both the traditional and the fractional ownership. Well, that's given to you by deed, in comparison to the right of use ownership, which is given to you by a certificate of use. Now, by deed, when you get a traditional ownership or fractional, it's generally for a lifetime. You get a deed, it's yours, you keep it for the rest of your life, and you can will it to your children. By certificate, it's usually ownership for a set period of time. However, similar to a deeded lifetime, during that particular period of time, just like a deed, you can sell it, you can will it to your heirs, or you can convey it any way you wish. Now, the traditional ownership is generally considered the most costly. Fractional ownership would be considered the less costly, and right of use in most all circumstances will be considered the most affordable. What do I mean by this? Well, let's just take a look at a real-life example, and we're going to take a look at a $1 million vacation home. Under the traditional form of whole ownership, a $1 million vacation home will cost you $1 million. You're either going to have to write a check for $1 million or find a way to finance it. With a fractional ownership form of ownership, Let's assume that you're going to buy 50% of the property. So you'll have a 50% fractional share, and your cost of ownership is basically 1/2 or $500,000. Now with the right of use form of ownership, particularly with the SGOC, the Schecher Group Owners Club, your cost will be a fixed cost of $125,000. So you can see where we get traditional is the most costly, fractional is less costly, and the right of use is the most affordable in this particular situation. Now, when you buy a vacation property, you're going to have to pay the related expenses that come along with ownership. As you can see here with the traditional whole ownership, you will pay 100% of all the ownership costs. That's going to be your taxes, your insurance, your maintenance, your homeowner's fees, and just about everything else you can think of that comes along with the ownership of your primary residence is also going to be true for your vacation home. Now with the less costly fractional, you're only going to pay 1/2 of those ownership costs because your deed says you own 1/2 of the property. Now, with the right of use certificate, the unique thing is that you're going to pay no operational cost. That's right, you pay 0. And there's a very good reason as to why you're not required to pay any of the operational costs, but that'll be a topic of another seminar. So let's take a look at a comparison chart between traditional, fractional, and right of use ownerships. Everything starts with a purchase price. 100% the traditional, you've got $100,000. In this particular case, we're going to have $1 million home. 50% fractional ownership, you will have $500,000. The right of use, your fixed cost was $125,000. Now, assuming you can get a 3% mortgage with 10% down in order to get into the ownership, with the traditional, you'd pay $100,000. With the fractional, you'd pay $50,000. With the right of use, you're not going to have a mortgage, so it's not going to apply. You pay nothing. Your mortgage balance with traditional, if you put 10% down, your mortgage would be $900,000, and this is going to be interest only for 10 years. If you're a 50% fractional owner, your mortgage will be $450,000. And then again, with the right of use, there are no mortgages, so you're not going to have a mortgage to worry about paying off 10 years down the road. Now, there will be an annual expense associated with having a mortgage, and that's going to be the 3% interest that the bank charges you. So if you are a traditional whole owner, you're going to pay $27,000 a year. Now don't forget, this is going to be on top of the traditional or the normal costs that are associated with owning a property. And with traditional ownership, that's going to be roughly around $15,000 a year. But we're not going to show it here on this comparison chart. Just keep that in the back of your mind, that in addition to your mortgage payment, you're going to have to pay about $15,000 a year just for the normal upkeep and related cost items that come along with traditional ownership. Now with fractional ownership, just cut that number in half. Instead of $15,000, you'd only pay $7,500 for the annual cost of ownership, and you would only pay $13,500 when it comes to the annual mortgage, because you're a 50% fractional owner, so you're only responsible for 50% of the mortgage. Now with the right of use form of ownership, none of this will apply. You pay nothing. Now, when we go out 10 years, we have the OOPE. The OOPE is your out-of-pocket operating expenses. At the end of 10 years, if you bought the home on the traditional form of ownership, you will be out of pocket $370,000. If you bought on the fractional form of ownership at a 50% value, you would be out of pocket $185,000. If you purchased the right of use option, you would be out of pocket $125,000. Now, most people do keep their vacation home for 10 years. So let's take a look at what would happen if you sold your vacation home. Well, assuming you could get exactly what you paid for it in today's market, which is a possibility, but as most everybody in the real estate industry knows, the vacation home and second home market has been depressed. There's no secret about it. Values in many cases have gone down as much as 50%. So let's just look at a realistic thing here, and let's say, okay, at the end of 10 years, what am I going to be faced with? What are some of the factors? Whether my property appreciates or depreciates. One thing for sure is you're going to have to pay off your mortgage balance. And if you bought the vacation home under the traditional form of ownership, you would have to pay out $900,000. If you are a 50% fractional owner, you're going to have to pay $450,000. However, if you are the right to use, you don't have to pay anything. There is no mortgage to pay out. At the end of 10 years, you can walk and you have no risk of losing anything. There are some options available to you as a fraction owner, or I should say as the right to use owner. If you are a member of the SGOC, there is a upgrade and transfer fee that can be paid that would allow you to sell your certificate to somebody for basically exactly what you paid for it. And this is something that will be a topic of another seminar. But basically, looking at this comparison chart, it's important that you understand what the mathematics are here. There are three forms of ownership: traditional, fractional, and right of use. And this is a pretty good comparison when you want to see what does the math tell you. With the traditional, you have 100% ownership, yet you also have 100% of the expenses, but you also have unlimited use. With the fractional form, with 50% ownership, here you're going to have 50% use. You get to use that property 50% of the time based upon the set number of months that you purchased. With the right of use, it's a little bit different. You're going to have a set guaranteed time that the property is yours, but under the SGOC form of ownership, you will have unlimited use of the property, but it will be subject to certain restrictions. And again, those restrictions will be a topic of another seminar. So basically, at the end of the day, the question becomes, what is the math telling you in this comparison chart? It's very important that you know and understand the three different forms of ownership and the cost associated with each one. You must know this before you make your buying decision. The Schecher Group, the Schecher Group Owners Club. It's a private club for educated vacation owners. It's where the math speaks and the buyers listen.